Awesome. Here we are back on In Your Skin podcast episode number 3 here with Marcia, the amazing woman she is. She's quite the role model for myself and the advocacy I have had in this town. She has inspired me a lot. So, Marcia, I'm going to pass it off to you. Please introduce yourself.
Well, hello, and Anisha, thank you for having me.
Of course.
This entire journey that you're on fills my heart because the youth of today are the ones that are going to make change in this world.
I believe so too.
Yep, you're well on your way, girl.
Oh, thank you.
Well on your way.
Please tell me about your experiences, where you were born, where you moved from, how you got to Collingwood. Just give me a little background information, get the viewers.
There you go. Well, my name is Marcia Journey. I was born in Jamaica and came up here when I was 2. My mother was a Jamaican nurse. She came from a life of privilege. Her father was a dentist, family mostly doctors and judges and lawyers. And she comes up to Canada in the 50s to further her nursing career. And she fell right into the love of hockey. She was Canadian culture all the way. Oh yeah, original 6. She was something else with that, and she just just embraced it for sure. And then I came up to Collingwood about 12 years ago. And wanted our son to learn to ski, Matthew, who was 4 at the time. So we rented right at the ski hill, and we've sort of been in Collingwood ever since. I turned it into a full-time thing, I'd say about 7 years ago.
Amazing.
Other than that, I was back and forth like a crazy person. Right. But, and my sort of story is that my mother was a Jamaican nurse, black Jamaican nurse. My father was, I believe, the whitest man in Canada. I've told this story before, right down to his hair. I mean, his hair was white when he was 20, And the way I came to be, my parents met when my mother went to buy her first house in Scarborough in the early 60s. And she was into the new home site. She picked out her lot, and she'd written a full price offer, my father being the real estate agent. And he went to present the offer to the builder in the early 60s. During the offer presentation, he said to the builder in some way, shape, or form that, listen, this is a great offer. She is a well-qualified nurse from Jamaica. And the builder stopped dead, according to the story my mother told me, and pushed the offer back across the table and said, I am not selling to people of, let's assume he said color. Who knows? Whatever it was, he was not selling to a person from Jamaica. My father got mad.
Oh, as I would too if I was in that situation.
My father got mad. And he left. He went back and he told my mother exactly what the builder had said. And between the two of them, they together took it to the Human Rights Council. And they fought for what was right.
As they should.
As they should.
That is remarkable.
As they should. She got her house.
Oh, did she?
She sure did. She wasn't having it. She got her house. He got fired. He lost his job. The builder would not deal with him anymore. Yeah. But you know what? It's okay. He picked up one. He was a real estate agent, so it runs in the family. And they started dating after that. And a few years later, they were married. And then they had me.
Incredible.
And here I am.
Here you are.
Here I am. So, there's the story of the Lovings, who were the family in the interracial family in the States. And I guess they were our version of the Lovings in Canada in the early 60s.
That's incredible. I love hearing that story from you. And I read it on the Bay, which was an amazing article, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very emotional.
Yeah.
I love that. Once your mother had experienced a hardship, she didn't back off. She wasn't silent. She said, no, I don't stand for this.
That's right.
And she became her own advocate. And I see that very much in you, which I just think is absolutely outstanding.
Well, she didn't tell me that story until I was in my 20s.
Oh, really?
I grew up in Scarborough, Lawrence and Port Union, farthest east you could get, in a subdivision that we were the only ones of color. Till I was probably in the 6th grade. but it's all I ever knew. I didn't know any different. I don't remember experiencing, it was an idyllic situation. My mother was well respected in the community and very lucky to land where we did. That wasn't the subdivision that she was told not to. This was later, about 1969 we moved in there. And so I never knew any different, but she also didn't impart any of the hardships that she'd had. I mean, she came up here and at times she had told me in my 20s that she would call for an apartment, to rent. She was a young nurse, call for an apartment, and yes, it's available, come on over. She'd get right over there and they'd take one look and go, oh, I'm sorry, it's taken. And it happened over and over again. Jamaica isn't particularly color prejudice. There's certainly an education level and class prejudice, but so to have the color of your skin be what defines you, that people, judge you based on that, must have been one heck of a shock to her.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm sure culture shock aside, moving from Jamaica to Canada.
In January at age 19. Can you imagine?
The temperature difference to start
Right
off, but
that.
everything between Canadian culture and then Jamaican culture, very, very different. So that must have been hard on her herself. With that being said, would you say that your experiences from your mother and yourself were quite different?
Oh, incredibly different. Incredibly different, I'm sure, I grew up as your average suburban kid in Scarborough.
Yeah.
And she didn't impart any of those things to me until I was old enough to handle it. So
in a form of protection, I assume.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
You mentioned in your article that Floyd's death had a very big impact on you, particularly because of your relationships and your family in Jamaica. So would you be comfortable sharing that with me?
Yeah, absolutely. The death of the murder of George Floyd, it definitely, it hit me in the soul. And it's not the first one. I mean, there have been so many, but I think like the rest of the world, it meant so much more because of COVID, because we were locked down, because we were glued to our televisions no matter what. There was no place to go. There wasn't anything to be busy about and sort of, whereas the other ones before. The first one to really hit me was Trayvon Martin. And it hit me not because I was here. I was in Nassau at my cousin's house and CNN was on all the time. And so you were seeing that over and over again. What happened here to me is George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter marches that spawned were because of COVID. A gift of COVID, I look at it this way, the change that's happening, because people were just glued to their TV and they couldn't look away. They couldn't look away, and they finally saw what people of color have been seeing for a very long time.
I would definitely agree with you. I think COVID was definitely hard. It still is hard. It had its terrible moments, but the one thing it did is it just made the world stop for a moment. And with the world stopping, we reflected. And with George Floyd's murderer being in that time period, I think it initiated this movement that might not have potentially happened if COVID were not present.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. And you asked me, how it affected me. For me, watching that, I have lots of cousins that are all different shades. My father was the whitest man in Canada. Yeah. I'm a lot lighter, But I have a lot of cousins, family in Jamaica and Nassau, and then quite a few have emigrated to the States for university, and then stayed, and then married, and then I have cousins that have had, that have black sons that are the same age as my son, Matthew. And, Matthew is a shade lighter than me. So I don't worry about Matthew. When he goes out, and if he got into any trouble, I would hope that the police would be there to help him. Yes. It just doesn't cross my mind. Whereas my cousin Kathy, for example, in Boston, I remember a couple of years ago, her posting on Facebook about having to have the talk with her son. The talk about how you're going to be judged by the color of your skin. You have to act like this. You have to, in a way, be an extra level of it's fear, really. that they're going to come home. You know, that how this, if you get stopped, this is how you have to behave. Not all police, not all police are like that, but there were enough bad apples, like what happened to George Floyd, that Kathy and I are almost the same age. Our kids are almost the same age. And the only difference is the countries we live in and the shade.
The shade of melanin, yep.
The shade of melanin. And it's so unfair. And it just, when I saw this spiraling out of control like this, it was the fear for their sons.
100%. I don't have any family in America, so I cannot share that experience with you. But hearing how emotional it makes you brings me to an emotional state, because having to have that talk, there will be moments where it might get violent, or you have to have this fear mindset implemented. That's terrible. Yeah. And I guess this whole movement is working towards diminishing that, but I'd love to talk about how it's not good enough to just be a visionary. You can't just imagine the future and say, I'm not racist, I support the movement, I hope the world is a better place in 20 years. No, what are you going to do about it?
Well, exactly. And what I saw in this town that I'm so proud of, to turn the corner walking into that first Black Lives Matter march and expect to maybe see, we've not been known as the most diverse town. We are quickly becoming that, through COVID, through people coming up, but we've not been known as that.
Not from the get-go.
Not from the get-go, as you know. But to turn that corner and see thousands of people, and they didn't just show up. They put thought into their signs. They made signs. They took time. Some of them called me. Is this appropriate? Is that appropriate? And this is all new to me. Yeah. So I was like, I think so. Let me call my cousin Sharon. That was kind of it. To see all of that, to see that people got it. And it's when people that aren't directly affected stand up in outrage and go, oh, no. This is too much.
This doesn't work. No.
This doesn't work. That things begin to change.
Yes.
And I'm watching the change. It's quite a time to live in.
It is quite a time. I feel like we're taking a lot of big steps right now, and it's long overdue. And you are a part of that change, Marcia. And with that being said, you did mention that all of this was kind of new for you, as it was for me. So do you think the Black Lives Matter movement built you a personal platform for advocacy? Did it initiate your process?
Definitely.
Yes.
Because it did initiate the process. I was not really involved in this advocacy until this moment. And to walk around the corner and see that many people there, and suddenly what started it actually was after watching the George Floyd murder over and over again, I was sitting in the kitchen with my son Matthew, and I looked at him and said, did I ever tell you? Like, first of all, we went over the George Floyd bit, yes, and that was very upsetting. But I said, did I ever tell you the story of your grandparents? And I told him that story of how they met and what they went through. And he looked at me in awe going, that's amazing. And then I wrote a Facebook post about that and put it together. And then the next thing, I found myself turning that corner, seeing all of this, being filled with emotion, and grabbed a megaphone and started telling my parents' story.
Stage, Marcia.
Took the stage. Yeah, I've never met a microphone I didn't love. But it was emotional, and then there was so much energy and so many incredible people, that these kids that were out there telling their stories of what they'd experienced, and I started to tell mine again.
Exactly. It's beautiful. It truly is a beautiful experience, and I would do anything to just go back and feel how I felt in that moment. I still reminisce over it, but during part 2, because we just have to wrap up here quickly, I would love to continue that conversation. All right. See you in part 2.
Hi everybody, I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning into this new episode with Marcia, episode 3. And in addition, thank you so much to the Collingwood Youth Center for providing their amazing space and equipment to keep my podcast rolling. In addition, I wanted to say my apologies for the technical difficulties that we struggled with throughout this episode, hence why part 1 and part 2 are split up. Throughout part 2, you will notice that my camera will freeze, but just keep on watching. Anyways, if you know anybody else who would like to be on this podcast, or perhaps even yourself, reach me at the email below. Anyways, without further ado, keep on watching and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Perfect. Back from part 1, now leading into part 2. I kind of wanted to continue the conversation that we were just on. I felt that same feeling the first moment I went to the Barrie rally. It was, I think, a week before I had spoken on June 11th at the rally here, and it was amazing. I would say it was half the inspiration for me reaching out to speak. There were so many people, and to see so many people come together collectively, and as an individual who had a lot of hardships under the surface that had not been yet expressed, it was overwhelming in the best way possible, because I was like, this is a safe space. Mm-hmm. Yes. And with that, so many more safe spaces were developed, and the next week Collingwood had 2, and that was amazing. It was my own hometown that I had a lot of issues with growing up. Mm-hmm. So to see all those people were there in support, it really did melt my heart.
It was empowering.
Yes.
It was absolutely empowering. It was awe-inspiring. Like, I've said over and over again, I've never been so proud of this town. Like, it's just absolutely incredible. And you were saying something before about, it's not enough to say, I'm not racist. Mm-hmm. You need to be anti-racist now. Yes. You need to stand up and say, sorry, that joke is not acceptable.
It's not funny.
It is. Change comes, in my humble opinion, one uncomfortable conversation at a time. Mm-hmm. And I've had a lot in the last few months. I've had a lot. Some have gone very well, some not so much. Mm-hmm. You make choices at that stage.
And that's a part of the whole process of figuring this out and dismantling this systemic racism, right? It's not pretty. It's never been pretty, but we're working towards creating this utopia where everyone's welcome, right?
Well, this is it, where everybody feels a sense of belonging, mm-hmm. where everybody feels welcome, mm-hmm. and where everybody gets a seat at the table.
Yes.
Okay? This town is changing dramatically.
100%.
I'm a real estate agent with the Chris Kelleher team here. We are having a flood of people wanting to come up for their piece of the good life, to get out of the city, and now that they can work from anywhere, and it's all races, all cultures, everything, and we're going to have such wonderful richness of, everybody brings something with them. They come up here and they enrich the community.
100%.
Food,
cultural values,
cultural music.
Oh my goodness.
Some dancing. Okay, we will get back to all of that one of these days. This is it.
This goes on.
This is it. But it's going to. I've been lucky enough to be asked by the town, mm-hmm. as you have, to be on our Unity Collective.
Amazing collective it is.
Right?
Yes.
To have a town council that is not diverse. We have many women on there, but not diverse. To have them realize that, we need to hear the voices of the people that are affected by this. Mm-hmm. We also have lots of Collingwood, of people that are not of color on here as well too, that are advocates and that are supporters on there, that we're coming together as one in every shade possible to give voice to everybody.
Yes, and the one thing, I love what you said there, the one thing that I love about the collective is that everybody has an equal playing field to voice their opinions, right? I learned so much from those meetings. I am definitely not an expert in any of this process, but I come out of there and it's the more you know, right?
Absolutely. And the different perspectives.
Yes, that I never once saw before or realized. It's quite an incredible conversation to be a part of, and I'm very privileged to be a part of that.
I just feel so lucky to be included in that, and to look at it from, we have from our elders, Carolyn Wilson on there, who runs the Sheffield Museum, like from there, all the way down to our youth that is going to change the world. It is quite a collection.
It is quite a collection, and I'm proud to call it Collingwood's.
Yes. Yes, we're leading the way.
We are paving the way.
Well done.
With that being said, including the collective, the marches, the movement, would Marcia in 2001, 20 years ago, would she have pictured this?
No.
No?
I don't think I would, you know. But to be fair, in 2001, this wasn't really on my radar.
No.
I'm very proud of my Jamaican heritage. But I've never been directly hit in the face with racism, to my knowledge. I'm sure what's interesting now that we've been talking, and after your speech at International Women's Day and talking about those things as a kid, stuff started to come back to me a little bit. Like there
the
are
subliminal,
those.
stuff I kind of forgot.
But I didn't really take it to heart. I sort of wasn't racist, but there was little bits, that affects you down the road. Maybe how you make the decisions about relationships, different things, but not a direct. People that aren't being served in restaurants, something like that. We're not at the same level here that they are in the States, but it's still there.
It's still there.
It's still there. It's still systemic, but we are doing something about it, girl.
We sure are. And moving forward and doing something about it in 20 years, quick math, 2041, I want to say? I don't know.
Ooh. Yeah, 20 years is 76 years of age. That's what 20 years is. Good Lord.
What do you imagine for not just Collingwood, not just Canada, but on a global level? What is your piece that you think or predict or hope?
Hope. I think hope is it. And I do have hope. I have incredible hope. And I think in 20 years, my son Matthew will be 38. So according to my calculations, he should be just about ready to get married then. That's where we're going to cut it off. So I'm looking at it that the world will be a better place for him, but for his children, I want and I hope that skin color isn't even a factor. Yeah. It's not even a factor.
It's not a thought that comes to
your mind. It's not a thought. You describe people as the color of shirt that they're wearing. Yeah. What you do, who you are. But skin color doesn't come into it. So maybe take a page from sort of how Jamaica is, where, Martin Luther King came down there and said, when I'm in Jamaica, I feel human. Wow.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And as you should feel human, because you are human. We are all human. You matter. I matter. Everybody watching this podcast matters.
But right now, Black Lives Matter, because that's the house that's on fire. BLM. And you know what? They're not, as one comedian had said, we're not fighting for equality. We're just fighting to matter. Yeah. What's less than matter? I just want to matter in the States. Here it's a different thing. I think here it is more about equal opportunity for jobs. Is an ethnic sounding name going to hold you back from a job? Like that kind of thing, Let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of any impediment to equality.
Exactly. The little things, they add up. And even if it's not something you go about thinking in your daily routine and your daily lives, a lot of people have to think about that sort of stuff. A lot of people have to worry about getting jobs because of their background, or going to school, or experiencing all those microaggressions and ethnic stereotypes and everything we talked about in the first podcast with Isaiah. It's hard, and a lot of people don't shift their perspective into thinking, oh wow, outside of my reality, a lot of people are experiencing different things.
And this is it. And once people recognize their privilege, and they own that and go, okay, it's not an equal playing field in all cases. And it's not. We have to make it an equal playing field.
We do.
And that's just one step at a time. Education. These podcasts, this is all I was talking about. You have to have conversations. Once people have conversations and understand each other, my hope is they find some commonality there. And they're like, hey, wow, you know, we do that the same. Or, well, I really like this. Or, wow, I'd like to try that. Conversations, once you keep that conversation going, there's only one. It will lead to change for the better.
100%. We need to look for the similarities, the common places, the common ground, instead of looking to identify everybody differently.
Exactly. Exactly. So we go from there.
Marcia, everything you've said so far has just been absolutely incredible. You are such a pillar. You inspire me every day. You are incredible. But I am curious to hear your perspective, or growing up, or not even growing up, or even now, who was your role model?
My mother. My mother, without question.
I love that.
Yeah, Yvonne Hubbs. How, other than being a pretty incredible mother and also a darn good human, that taught me to be charitable with her actions, not her words. And also somebody that was very involved in the school, in my school, in the community. I mean, she was, but also somebody that would fight for right. Fight for what is right and what is just. Took it all the way.
She took it all the way.
All the way. In the early 60s, respect.
I could listen to that story of the realtor and the house builder all day long, just because I am so amazed that, you know, she stood up for what she believed in. And I don't even know your mother personally, but I just see that you embody her completely. And I think the community also sees that you are such a strong woman, and I'm so privileged to have you here today.
Well, I am very privileged to be here, and girl, you inspire me.
Oh, thank you, Marcia.
You inspire me, and you give me complete hope for this future, because with people like you out there and your reach now, you're going to reach people, and it's going to change the world.
I hope so.
There you go.
One step at a time.
One step at a time.
And you are here to help me. So.
Any way I can. I feel it kind of look like you could be my daughter. Susan, you good? Absolutely.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for being here today, Marcia. Like I said, I am so happy to have you, and I will be so happy to review this podcast over, because I'm in awe of what you've said so far. If anybody has any questions for Marcia, you can find all her information at inyourskinpodcast.com. That is where you can also find all my other projects of advocacy and anything else you want to know. So, do you have anything to say before we wrap up?
You know what? Again, I just have to go back to how proud I am of this town. Yeah. I'm in awe. I'm just in awe. And they're making great strides. To even, we had a little Confederate flag issue. We still do. But they are taking it, and have taken it all the way to the federal government to make change. We actually have to change hate speech laws, but they've taken it that far. And I believe we will lead the way.
I think so.
I really do. I think other small municipalities will jump on board, because as well, they're changing. The whole landscape of this country is changing.
Completely. We are a collective right now, but I think other collectives are going to join us in unity, and that will be our takeaway.
Exactly.
Amazing.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Marcia.
Thanks for having me.
That is In Your Skin, episode 3. Amazing.
Girl. I might start watching the 6 o'clock news.